Rorschach's Journal 2023. I see that since my production figures have come far, must adapt, must not show anyone that I don't have pockets.
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display, where my setup is not ideal for this review. Anyways, today I got a really interesting one over here, which further proves that I have the tendency of picking up very niche characters for this channel. But anyways, over here we have one of my new favorite comic book characters. This is the DC Direct Watchmen Rorschach 1/6 scale deluxe collector figure. So I just watched Watchmen for, well, technically the second time, but I did watch it the first time years ago and I wasn't really paying attention to it. I was pretty much a child, which means I wasn't processing anything except explosions. But I rewatch it and oh my god, it's an amazing movie. Holy shit, no one told me? Like, we're gonna talk about this figure, it's an awesome character and all of that, but I'm actually gonna keep details about the movie and the comic, which I haven't read anyways, to a minimum, because I say it is essential viewing for any superhero, supervillain person out there. Even though it's not really a superhero story, is it? And this is a pretty old figure. I believe it came out around the same time as the movie in 2009. And there's a few reviews out there, but you know, back then in old, like what, 2012 YouTube, the video quality was really piss poor. You could hardly make out what they were saying. The camera was all over the friggin' place. They were probably had a cold or they were high and you could hear their mom in the background. And it was just not a great viewing experience. So I figure I'd go ahead and just muster up the elbow grease to give you a modern review. Now, I was fortunate enough to find this figure, which seems to be in very rare quantities these days, but oddly enough, still selling for the exact same price it was selling for when it was released over 10 decades ago. The same price as it was selling for over 10 years ago. So it's kind of a steal. If you like this figure at the end of this review, I'm not even sure if I will. I just think that it looks really cool. Then definitely go out and get him. Hard to find, but good price if you can grab him. Anyways, let's start out with the box. Unfortunately for me, he is mint in packaging, though the box has seen better days. You can see there's this big old line going on down here. I thought, ooh, maybe he has a grapple hook or something, but he does, but no cord included. But getting a little bit closer to the packaging, I mean, it's pretty evident what we got over here. We have the Doomsday Clock at the upper left corner, along with the Watchmen logo off to the side, DC Direct, and then we kind of looked at all the readables over here at the bottom. Also, really excellent picture of Rorschach. It's up for debate whether this figure is based on the comic or the film. I believe it's more based on the comic, just based on the fact that the details are a little bit more rolled back, but it's kind of hard to say because this is a 2009 1/6 scale figure. We wouldn't be seeing the super premium details until, I'd say, around mid-2010s. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Off to the side, we have Watchmen once more, Doomsday Clock, Rorschach again. On this side, exact same thing. No changes, just a few more scuffs. Again, shows its age. Big deal. On the top, all the same graphics, just in different places. If I could bend my back like Beckham, whoever that is, I don't know people. We have some warning labels to keep us a little bit familiar.
C. Green Arrow.
And as per usual,
Sad audience.
the back of the box is actually pretty damn cool, especially if you don't know Watchmen or let alone know who Rorschach is. If we pull right up to the top here, you actually get a pretty succinct bio on his whole deal. He's pretty much a very, dark and brooding detective type who is also somewhat of a slasher villain at the same time. You also have this really nice shot, which may be from the movie, I'm not totally sure. Going on down, we have some other figures which released at the same time. Oh, there's our confirmation. All right, this is based on the film, so that'll give us a little bit more of subjectivity when comparing this figure to the film counterpart. But you also have some other offerings that came out in this very brief wave of only 3 figures, being Dr. Manhattan and the Comedian. And then down here, just a whole list of other releases that they had at the time, which we'll probably never see on this channel. But still, kind of cool to see DC Direct's early beginnings. We actually got a fold-open window a la NECA style, but there's no Velcro or magnets securing it whatsoever. We have another excellent portrait of Rorschach off to the side here, along with another bio. I don't know if it's the same as what was on the back.
Nope.
I honestly don't really read these until after the fact. Then up here you have one of many great one-liners from this magical beast.
This city is afraid of me. I've seen its true face.
And then you got the figure emblazoned in the plastic, as we expect. And then the Doomsday Clock. Now, after all these years, it's time to free Rorschach from his packaging, and we're going to bring in a few friends in order to do that. Of course, we've got Betsy, whenever it comes to a very big box like this, and we're going to go ahead and just start from the top. I mean, it doesn't matter really what decade these 1/6 scale figures are coming from. They pretty much all open the same way for the most part, but since this is retired packaging and a retired period within the DC Directs line, I figured it's worth just having a look. It's a little tricky there. Yeah, it's a pretty stiff cardboard. And as I'm folding this open, I will say that one of the benefits of getting older 1/6 scale figures is that you can kind of get away with putting them alongside modern figures as opposed to figures that are on the smaller scale. Of course, when they're smaller, you're a lot more close and personal with the tiny details. But as for something, don't use a knife this way, by the way, towards your fingers. As for smaller figures, are 6-inch scale, 3.75-inch, things get a lot more tiny, and then you're going to be a little bit more critical. But as for older figures like this, you can get away with a little bit more. And there are a whole bunch of modern third-party versions of this character floating around. And there are some older releases of this figure as well that are not this 1/6 scale version. But for me, it really came down to either coughing up a ton of money for a more accurate rendition or spending a little less money for one of the original official ones. And obviously I opted for the latter. And not only that, but it's going to allow me for some really awesome customizing ideas, which we will talk about at the very end of this review. Anyways, here's the figure in the bubble, and he's looking absolutely fantastic. So, you know what, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Before we take a look at the figure himself, I did actually want to put a little bit of a spotlight on the figure stand, which is a little bit primitive, but it's actually kind of nifty, especially since we didn't see any other figure stands with the other figures that we've seen in the 1/6 scale on this particular channel. It's a little bit flimsy, you could tell there's a cheapness to it, but it's got some really cool features. At the bottom, you actually have this really nice, polished, glossy, whatever, Rorschach logo, which looks absolutely sweet. Also on the bottom, you have Watchmen, and then nothing else. They also have the imprints there made in China, just like, 99% of the things that are in America. But then as for the stand itself, something that I don't think I see done with a whole lot of modern figures, it's kind of a ratchet system. So you hold down this little button back here, and it actually goes up and down, a little bit of a slidey slide, and then you kind of release it, and then it kind of clicks in wherever you want. You see there's these little holes along that edge, and then prop it up as high or as low as you want. So you could probably have him doing some superhero landing poses if you really wanted to. So here's the figure, and yeah, he makes me pretty happy. I really love this retro aesthetic. Again, it's an older figure. It's meant to be hyper-realistic, at least for the time, and obviously it hasn't aged too well in that respect, but you have lines like Mego, which are meant to be dumbed down, meant to be more tactile experience, a little bit poofy with the soft goods, and really that just allows me to love this figure all the more. And again, I'm seeing a lot of little things I can do with this guy to make him even more interesting. We'll talk about that at the end. For now, straight review. So I guess we are going to have to hover around as we go from head to toe, starting off with, of course, his titular Rorschach Mask. And one amusing thing I was thinking about is my first impressions of this mask when I saw the product shots are, it's not quite the Rorschach face that I would prefer on my Rorschach character, but then again, it's a Rorschach test in and of itself. When you look at it, you're going to see different objects or animals or situations. That's kind of the point of the test. For me, I see a smile. That's what I'm getting from here. But you could be looking at this and he might look totally menacing to you. And that's one of the things I want to do with this figure. Make custom Rorschach masks that are interchangeable. Because this mask is actually removable, as much as he's not going to like that. He also comes with this really fine looking hat. It's made of a solid plastic, not cloth like the rest of the outfit, except for the shoes and the gloves, but still it kind of blends in pretty well. I think it's a fine marriage between the color palette and the material choices. I think everything ties together pretty nicely. Going down to the trench coat, it actually reminds me a lot of the Invisible Man, the Claude Rains version, of course, the one that matters. And I do get a lot of vibes from other characters in Rorschach's design. Like down here we have what everyone pretty much calls Joker's pants, and yeah, it is Joker's pants. But part of me wonders, since this is an alternate DC universe that takes place during the 1950s, the Cold War, maybe in this universe he killed the Joker at one point when Batman never did? I'm losing track. Let's also have a look at the gloves. He comes with many alternate hands, but the stock ones he comes with are 2 fists, looking absolutely spectacular. You can see that there's sort of these grooves along the top, and then each finger is pretty well detailed. They're not getting muddied up in the sculpt or in the paint, which I really do appreciate. And then going downstairs, we have two excellent looking shoes. I don't think I'm going to go ahead and undress this guy completely. Maybe if I go ahead and do a whole bunch of mods, I'll do a little bit of a brief side note like I kind of did with that Cronin figure we had to look at before. But for now, as he stands, pretty solid. I like him quite a bit. But the last thing we have to look at this figure before we take him apart from his vanilla state is his actual head sculpt. So let's go ahead and remove the hat, and he will be very reluctant as we remove his face! So we can have a look at the actual face underneath, which I haven't looked at yet. And looking at it, you know what? For 2009, that's not too bad. I'm sorry, I forgot the actor's name, but before Rorschach, I knew him as playing Freddy Krueger in the craptacular Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where he did a fine job, just not as Freddy Krueger, but as Rorschach. Holy crap, he was a tour de force, easily my favorite part of the movie, and a movie full of great things. Getting up close to the face sculpt, it's perhaps a little bit too symmetrical, too clean, especially when you consider the likeness from the actual film, but it does the job. You look at it and then you have a good idea of how this is Rorschach unmasked for the little time that he is. And then, yeah, he does look very broad at the shoulders. From the reviews I've seen, there is kind of a scarf and an undershirt going on. I'm going to try removing that and see if that thins him out a bit. Again, if I do enough mods that kind of warrants an additional video, then I'll let you guys know in the description, and you can go ahead and check that out for yourself. And last thing I wanted to mention before we move on to accessories is that you notice that we have this little strap on his shoulder. That is meant to be detached, because if you go ahead and reference the box over here, you'll see it is also popped off. So that is actually not a happy mistake. The figure is meant to be like that, which I kind of appreciate. The camera's going to be a little awkward for me as I attempt to put back on the Rorschach mask. As you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and study this very closely to see if I can replicate the stitches, or at least the basic shape, to create Rorschach masks of my very own. It is a little bit on the yellowed side. I think that's a result of age. I'm not too sure. Yeah, let's see how easy or difficult it is to get it back on his head. It doesn't seem too bad. It looks like he's about to rob a bank. Not too difficult, and it's okay to leave some wrinkles in there. Again, he's supposed to be very disheveled, very smelly, so he doesn't need to be exactly on the nose. No pun intended regarding that sculpt. And then, boop, dropped a little hat on there. There you go. Good job. Now, I think the next thing we'll do is just go ahead and look at all the various hand sculpts. So we have two open hands over here, which according to all the other reviews I've seen are bendable, and they are, but I don't think that's a term worth toting about when promoting this figure. Yeah, you can bend them, but they're not posable per se. I mean, it's a soft plastic, but that's about it. But regardless, they are well sculpted. They match very well in tandem with the fists that he already has on, and I really do love the seam lines to show you that are kind of composite gloves, or not little mittens or anything like that. He also comes with a pair of gripping hands, are both identical, although yes, they are both trigger compatible if you want him holding a gun, or the grappling hook. Speaking of which, here is definitely the best additional piece that he comes with that isn't his mask or any of his other garments, and that is his grappling hook. Not only is it very well painted, it shows its wear. I love how cleanly applied the silver, the gold, the black, and the brown is, but also you can pull off these little prongs as if he's about to shoot out the hook in order to either get up to really great heights like Batman, or shoot it right into somebody's torso, because this guy does not care who dies. And going back to those old reviews on this figure that I mentioned from years of yore, they complained that they were not able to remove the grappling hook, but not on mine. I'm not sure if it's meant to be removed or if that's a result of age, but that's another customizing thing I want to do. I'd love to add like a removable bendy chain or cord or something so it looks like he's shooting that out. I'll think about that. Maybe I won't, just because it is very tender material. I can't see me drumming it too easily, but that's in the cards. I'll have to give that a big think. The last two accessories are actually kind of one. You can't really have one without the other, except maybe this one. But anyways, we start off with this little tiny baby lighter over here, which is very well sculpted as small as it is. There's no flame effect. I think that would have been really nice. Another thing I could probably do if I think about the right materials, or if I could source the right eBay seller. And then we also have this little can of hairspray with Vite, which I believe is the alternate name of Ozymandias, another character from the film, and in that respect, the comic. And I love how well printed this is. This is another good showing of how this is a more modern 1/6 scale figure. Speaking of the detail, let's see how easy or hard it is to remove these hands, which have been on here for well over a decade. Whole generations have come and gone while this has been in packaging, so, oh, okay, not so bad. So it's literally just a mushroom peg right there. There's no joints of any sort, which I actually kind of prefer. That way things aren't too crazy when you're getting this glove on, like kind of like what we saw with the Cronin figure or the Hell Flame Killer figure from Tiger Toys is before. The glove kind of cups over the wrist, and that made it very difficult to get the hand on. But in this case, because it's a static joint, I think that'll make it much easier to get something like the gripping hand on. So let's give that a try. And yeah, honestly, fine, easy. And then like we'll go ahead and we'll slot on an open hand right there. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I kind of got to align it with the sleeve, and I can tell there is an extra sleeve under there, so that might be another mod that I do. As we saw with the Cronin figure, I kind of cut that under sleeve off because you don't see it anyways, and it hinders articulation. It makes it hard to swap out the hands, but not too hard because obviously I just got it on and it's not falling off at all. And I really dig that. The one thing I wish this character did have is some side pockets, because that's one of my favorite poses for Rorschach, where he just has his two hands in his pockets. Although maybe if I remove this hand, with a little bit of effort and try not to throw everything everywhere, and kind of put it over that fold right there, you can kind of fake it. It almost looks like, I mean, if we pull out a little bit, yeah, it kind of looks like he's got his hands in his pockets a little bit. You could play around with that. I went ahead and removed his hat so that way I'd have no trouble putting in the gripping hands, as we also look at the rest of his accessories and how they fit. So let's go ahead and start with my favorite, easily being the grappling hook. So I think obviously you're going to need to bend out the trigger finger. I really do like these hands. They're kind of universal. You could put just about any custom accessories you want into them because of how bendy they are. So let's see here. Just bend that little finger in there, and ooh, yeah, that looks pretty good. As with these next two accessories, I have actually no idea how this is going to turn out because they're so differently shaped. But let's start with this can of hairspray, which is of course meant to be his makeshift flamethrower, as he at least uses in the film. So yeah, that slots in, no issues at all. As for the lighter though, I guess what we can do is bend this hand up, and I've never really actually held a real one of these. Yeah, I'm lame, all right? I'm not sure if you'd be holding a lighter like this, but yeah, you can put it in between the fingers, and then you can kind of, yeah, that looks pretty okay. And then I imagine if you had like, you know, a basic flight stand, you can get a flame coming out or something like that. And again, if I choose to chop off those sleeves, you could probably get his arms a little bit higher. As I mentioned several times before, and I apologize for that, once you do some clothing mods, I am sure that the articulation of the space body will be a lot more enhanced. But with everything on, let's have a look and see what everything can do. We have a tad of tilt. I'm not sure what kind of joint that is. It could just be a swivel that doesn't allow for a whole lot of movement, but anyways, we got the swivel is actually just fine. There is no back and no forward at all, so I think it's just a swivel. I don't think it's a ball. I'll check on that whenever I peel this guy apart. In the torso, you do have actually a pretty good crunch, and you also have none back though, so we can do a good amount of forward at least. Shoulders, they come up, although again the soft goods kind of pull on everything. They come out at pretty much a full 90. It's almost got a little bit of a Batman wing going on right there. As for the elbows, I don't know if they're single or double jointed, but they do come past 90. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need. As for the rest, we already looked at those. I think they're just a swivel, and that's it. But considering the accessories he has, they should all work just fine, I think. As for the waist, you got a swivel, legs, kick, actually pretty good out. That's amazing. Forward is also fantastic. As for the knees, double jointed, again, past 90, come back. As for the ankles, you have a swivel. You can actually see the joint right there just over the shoe. And then you have some forward, you got some back, and I don't think they invented the rocker yet. Actually, let's go ahead and do a Tarantino and take a shoe off and just see if there is a rocker or not. Yeah, I can't even get the shoe all the way off, but yeah, definitely no rocker. Ugh, that is ugly looking. Let's get that shoe back on. I'm going to very gingerly bring some 6-scale figures in and out of the review room so we can do a few size comparisons. Over here we have the Tiger Toys Hell Flame Killer, which is literally just Cronin from Hellboy in his officer uniform, which is definitely my favorite review on this channel so far. And the only thing that's changed since then is I actually managed to source a custom display base for him, especially for him from China. So if you want to go ahead and find one of those, you'll probably come across them at some point. And then over here we also have my Sideshow Grayscale Nosferatu, who looks absolutely fantastic. He's probably one of my favorite figures that I got. I might do a review on him one day. Let me know if you guys are interested. Next, we have an official release of Cronin, this time in his modern uniform, highly repainted, and in fact, I just redid these blades with some of that Krylon silver I talked about recently. And then over here, we have the very elusive Dead Rising 2 Zombie. And to wrap this up with some more modern renditions of DC characters, we have the Hot Toys classic Harley Quinn with a Fison body, which I've never had before, and they're really cool, and it also makes her a lot more hot than she usually is. And then we also have the big boy, the very first 1/6 scale figure we looked at, the Suicide Squad King Shark, who is apparently trying to teach Rorschach about the varieties of religious experience, so good for him, get a little bit of knowledge. Now he just needs to show him Rorschach's journal, and then they're even. But then down here, we end things off with our little tiny baby friend, Star Wars The Black Series Muck Muck.
Holy crap, these guys get weirder every time. Wait. You said that men go to jail and dogs get put down, but I'm a Kowakian monkey lizard. You didn't say what happens to us.
You're blue, aren't you?
So what the hell's that supposed to mean?
That's gonna make my job a lot easier.
And that's going to do it for this Rorschach figure. For now. Again, there's a whole lot of mods I really do want to try out that I could put into another video if I feel like it's worth my time, if there's enough things that I do. First of all, I want to play around with the soft goods. Definitely the undershirt that's going on. I feel like it makes him a little bit too poofy and it hinders articulation. So I'm going to pull a Cronin. Yeah, Cronin's pretty much an action, a verb at this point on this channel. And take the sleeves off or just remove the undershirt entirely and see if that slenders him down a little bit, allows him to be a little bit more dynamic, and I think that would just help him quite a bit. Another thing that I wanted to do was make 2 custom accessories, which I think would fit just fine in these various gripping hands that he has. I first really want to make a cleaver, minor spoiler I guess, but that kind of was a key object in the movie. Gives you an idea of the rating, right? And the second thing, obviously, Rorschach's frickin' journal. I just want to get a little bit of leather from a dead wallet, get some paper, and then that should be pretty easy to whip up. I could just have him, I don't know, with it in the waistband or somewhere in his hand. Maybe he's actively writing in it or something like that. But yeah, overall, I really love this figure. As he stands, if you're not a customizer, which is fine, I think he's a great figure to get and very affordable too. Also, he's just a very niche character that not a whole ton of people know about, but really he just is very underrated, and this is a very good option for a potential choice to get him on your shelf. Like the other ones I saw that came out during around the same time, they definitely showed their age, like the joints were a little too obvious. I didn't like the fact that they had the solid cape that kind of limited the movement quite a lot. Even though they did come with a lot more masks and hands and all that, also they were really friggin' expensive. They also do a whole lot of modern bootlegs, as I talked about, but they were a little bit more expensive than I was willing to do, more so than the Cronin, so yeah, pass. And this figure, he pretty much has everything that I need to go with him. And then all the other things I want him to have, I can make, so all good, I'm fine with that. Perhaps not the most movie accurate because, again, this is a 2009 figure we're looking at. It's not from the main brands like Sideshow or Hot Toys. This is DC Direct. So he definitely shows a few of his quote-unquote flaws, but it's just a matter of the time in which he was released. All in all, just a really kick-ass looking Cold War badass, and I'd highly recommend him. Again, very limited quantities, as it says on the box. He is a limited edition figure, but technically all figures are limited, and so are we. But if you can find him for the stock price that he was released at, I say go for it. It's so cool, and there's a lot of really interesting things that you could do with him. And he's also a very good conversation starter for people who do not know about Watchmen, perhaps one of the most underrated comics in novel history. So thank you guys very much for watching. This was kind of an interesting tangent for this channel. I'm really glad we had a chance to look at this guy. If you enjoyed this review, you'd like to see more, and more than anything, an update on this figure if I do any custom work, then please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
and subscribe.
Or leave a bad review for your favorite comic book movie on Rotten Tomatoes.
Thank you guys once again, rock on, and I will see you all later.
Rorschach's Journal 2023. I see that since my let me read